Okay, so what do you say we get started? Hi everyone, my name is Matthew French. I'm with UNC Charlotte's University Career Center doing employer relations, and we are on the line today with the Progressive Turnout Project and Pete from Progressive. How are you doing, Pete?
Having a great day so far. What about you, Matthew?
I'm doing great. You know, the working from home thing, so just keeping the hustle up, So everyone, welcome. Feel free again to put any questions you might have over in the right-hand corner for Pete. You'll also see the screen I'm showing right now, and this is the Progressive Turnout Project's website where you can see more about all the things that they're doing and that they're hiring for. Make sure you go ahead and mute yourself, just to cut down on background noise. If you do have a question, again, you can put that in the comment section, or you can unmute yourself and say your question. So yeah, Pete, thank you for being on the line. I would love to just kind of start out. Can you tell us a little bit about what is the Progressive Turnout Project?
I sure can. So Progressive Turnout Project is a grassroots funded organization with just a single mission, which is to get Democrats to the polls.
Okay.
And what we do is design, execute, test and execute specialized voter turnout programs targeting inconsistent Democrats across the country in the most competitive races.
Nice.
And so what we're doing is hiring field representatives to meet voters where they're at, which is at their doors. And the idea is to have meaningful conversations with voters because it's hands down the most effective way to increase turnout at the polls. And in 2018, we were on the ground in 18 communities around the country. And in all but one, voters we talked to turned out at a higher rate than their peers. So our program has proven results. We actually turn out to vote about 10% higher than the rest of the community. So, you know, we have basically a research study going on with the control group and the treatment group. And the treatment group turned out at a 10% higher rate than the control group. So that's very rewarding for our donors and our supporters who fund this operation. It's actually, like I said, a grassroots funded effort. We have about 350,000 supporters, and the average donation is $14.50.
Oh, nice! I love a good grassroots campaign.
Yeah, so that's how we're doing it.
Cool. And so, you know, for students who are maybe interested in the roles that you're hiring for, can you tell us a little bit more about the role and what that all entails?
Okay, sure can. The role is called a field representative, and basically the job of a field representative is to talk to voters at their doors 40 hours a week for about 5 months, starting at the beginning of June until Election Day, November 3rd. So it's a full-time job. And our work week is actually Saturday through Wednesday. We're off Thursdays and Fridays. And the reason for that is that those are the best times to actually find people at home. And we work primarily in the afternoon and evening hours. So one of the nice things about these jobs is that they pay a living wage to start with. So that's great, right? But we also have paid benefits. We have PTO. We have help with student loans. We have a travel expense voucher. We have just a whole lot of benefits that you might not necessarily expect with a canvassing program like this. In fact, most of this kind of work is done by volunteers. We're almost unique in the fact that we hire people for these roles.
Oh, nice. So, and do you hire for, so the roles you're hiring for right now are like if a student is here in Charlotte, do they apply for just Charlotte? But what if they're maybe going to be in another part of North Carolina or another state? Do you guys have other opportunities like kind of all around the country, or is it just Charlotte right now?
That's really a great question. Thanks for that. So we're actually in 17 states this time around. And within North Carolina, we're in 5 metropolitan areas. So we're in Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, 6, and Asheville. And so in most of the states we're in multiple urban markets. So you can apply for as many of those as you like. naturally, I want to encourage people to apply for jobs here in the Charlotte district. But, you know, if you go on our website, you can see a map of where we're going to be operating this spring and summer around the country. And it's going to be places like Florida, Georgia, let's see, Arizona, a lot out in the Midwest. So Illinois, Nebraska, Iowa. Sounds like a crazy spread, doesn't it? But there's a method to the madness. These are all states that have Senate races that are really too close to call right now. And what we want to do is flip Senate seats in order to retake the Senate, as well as focusing on states where we feel like the presidential race is going to be close.
Oh, nice. So it's really taking that type of set and working through it.
I'm sorry, say it again?
So it seems like it's really taking the data that you guys are gathering, and then that's how you're kind of figuring out where roles are being placed.
We're extremely data-driven. We really start from the premise of a research study, and that's something we do in coordination with the University of Chicago and Northwestern University up in Chicago. And the study is about why people vote, why people decide to go to the poll and why don't they. So it really doesn't have the study doesn't have anything to do with a candidate or a platform or a plank or anything like that. We're trying to get at, you know, what motivates people to go and vote. Now, admittedly, we're trying to elect Democrats. So our target market, we call it a target universe, the people that we're going to knock doors on are going to be inconsistent Democratic voters. So people that are historically inconsistent, you know, that's readily available information from the Board of Elections. We don't think we need to spend money going after Democrats that vote every time because we know they're going to vote. So we really are focusing our resources on the people that we want to make sure get there this time.
Yeah, and I love, you know, I think students sometimes think, you know, maybe how do they even get into like the political industry? And what I find really cool too is you'll see students who identify across the spectrum of political beliefs and ways that they'll get kind of involved in politics. I've seen, we've had Dems I know who are students who identify as Democrats who have worked for Republican senators. I've seen students who are Republicans who have worked on campaigns for Democrats. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, how the skills they'll learn through the position can really be applied to across the political spectrum?
Well, sure. So I'll just use myself as an example, and I'll start by saying that I have a nonprofit background career-wise. So most of my professional career, I spent working for 2 nonprofits in Charlotte. And I was really sort of semi-retired when I saw this opportunity come up. Last summer, we had a special election in North Carolina for the NC 9th district. So the congressional seat, NC 9, you may recall that one, where the 2 Dans ran against each other, Dan and Dan. And so I said, well, you know, this looks like fun or something that I can feel rewarded from doing, so I'll give it a shot. So I went and did that for 3 months, and then this winter, and so that was over and done with. And then this winter, PTP called me and said, would you like to do something again with us, and this time would you manage an office for us? So there's, you know, number one, I'll say there's plenty of opportunity for advancement where I am. And all of the skills that are learned here can be taken to any sort of political environment. I mean, they're all the same skills you learn to be a political operative. So it really doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or independent, or Green Party, or what have you. It's more about the methodology and the way you go about making things happen.
Yeah, and I love that. So can you elaborate on those? What are some of the skill sets that students would gain from the role, and how are you guys there to kind of help support them in growing those skills?
Okay. Well, I would say some of the skill sets that first come to mind would be marketing strategies, because we spend a lot of time in our meetings every day with our field reps talking about strategy. Data science is another one. We use a basically the nationally known software program for tracking voters and for reporting data about voters. It's called VAN, or Smart VAN. And so this is a way to get started with a look into data science in the political realm. And like I said, we're doing a research study, so there's certainly opportunity in that direction as well. And a variety of technical skills that people would learn working with us, really having to do with, how you run a campaign, how you market to a group of voters, how to build up a strategy along those lines, when do you start and why, and so marketing, data science, technical skills, and it's also a way simply to develop a comfort level with dealing with people one-on-one in a professional setting, where going back to the concept of marketing, this is really a sales opportunity at the entry level. Although you're not selling anything, you're selling a concept. And a lot of people don't distinguish between selling products or services and selling ideas. And this is a way to get comfortable with selling ideas to people and see how you feel about that. Whether that's something you want to continue to do, because obviously there are very lucrative careers selling all over the place. I mean, just think about pharmaceutical sales for just one example.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, whenever I think when students hear sales, they're just like, wait, I don't want the sales role. But like what I tell students all the time is pretty much any position you're in, there's some form of sales that go into it. Selling that idea, I think, is, a prime way to kind of think about skill sets that they can grow, skill sets that they can really fine tune through these types of roles. How is the process for the application for the role?
I think it's pretty smooth flowing. You go to our website, and that's turnoutpack.org/jobs, and you would be taken directly to our job page, and you're able there to choose a position and also a location. By the way, I appreciate you putting up that website on the screen. Thank you for doing that. So you can do this more than once. I'm sorry that you can't pick out a bunch of locations and attack them all in one fell swoop with one try, but you can sequentially go through and look at different marketplaces where you want to work. You might also notice that we're advertising for management level positions, and that's a position that is the one I have presently. So even though we're, about 2 months in to our operation this year, we're still recruiting for district level field directors, which is, again, my job, as well as field representatives, which is the entry level position. So if somebody really felt capable and wanted to go for it, there's no reason why they shouldn't apply for a district level position, a management level position. I'll say that, I got my first real good look at PTP corporate in February when I went up for a week-long training. And number one, everybody there was in their 20s and 30s. And this is a 4-year-old organization. It started immediately after the 2016 inauguration. They had a visionary individual who started the whole organization, Harry Kaplan, and he just started hiring very competent people that have experience in campaigns. And so we've grown 16 times in size since 2016. What that means is the number of positions has proliferated. The number of specific skills that you can get jobs in has duplicate or multiplied as well. For instance, we have a lot of positions in social media right now at the corporate level, and that's a skill I didn't mention for the field rep jobs, where, social media is a big part of what they're going to be doing. They're going to be doing a lot of social media one-on-one with voters. We actually take photos with voters, and we post them on social media, and they're selfies that we do with us, and we call, we shout them out. And so there are all kinds of ways to go about doing that that allow our field reps to be creative. As long as they're within the bounds of what the organization is comfortable with, they can do that however they like to. We provide plenty of guidance, but so we just have, we have a corporate staff now of probably 100 people in every kind of specialization you can manage, and this is all just in the last 4 years. So think about going to work for an organization like ours, which is young and growing successfully, and the job opportunities that are there are crazy. So I would have the chance, if I wanted to continue to move up in the organization after this campaign is over. But I've been lucky before. My last career in Charlotte was with Crisis Assistance Ministry, which is a nonprofit here. And I got in at a high growth time for the agency, and I ended up having six different positions in a 14-year career. So you can't beat that. I mean, you just can't beat that for opportunity.
And so, someone brought up a really great question. Let's see here. Looks like Margaret, brought up a great question talking about how one of the requirements is a vehicle. But with COVID-19, how much is going out and driving around? Is that part of the job?
Well, that's a really good question, and we've had to already adjust our launch date from May 1 to June 1. We'd intended earlier to start working May 1 and knocking on doors May 1st. And so this may not be the last time we have to move it forward. Now, we can't afford to miss the time between May 1st and June 1st. We just can't afford to not get in touch with voters during that time period and start establishing long-term relationships with them, which is what we try to do with this particular approach, is, touch people 5 times before the election and establish, deep dive relationships with them. So we don't want to wait to start doing that. So we are actually going to be doing phone canvassing for the first month. We're not going to be hiring people yet. We won't hire people till June 1st, but those of us that are already on board, and there are 150 of us nationally that are managers, we're all going to be doing phone banking essentially, but we have very specific concepts in mind, like vote by mail is going to be the objective of one of those dialings, and another one is going to be registration, and a third one is going to be just getting in touch with our current supporters. So we're going to spend our month productively and just hope that things are such that we can start up June 1st, and regardless, we're not going to put anyone out there in a risky situation. We're not going to do that. I can imagine at some point there's a possibility that we'll send people out with masks and gloves and have them social distance from people at the doors. I mean, that's a possibility, but we haven't implemented anything like that at this point.
Okay. And so I would love to go ahead and give the opportunity for any of the students who are on the line today. Feel free to, again, put your questions over into the comment section, or you can unmute yourself and ask a question to Pete about the roles, about progressive turnout. Any questions you might have, let us know. I always like to give a second because sometimes it takes a second.
No, I'm not seeing the comments at my end, just so you know.
It's all right. I'll read them to you.
Okay. Hello, Maya.
Here's a good one. If we are located in 2 different places, for instance, we live in the Raleigh area, but we will be in Charlotte in the fall, how would applying work?
I see what you're saying. So you're going to be in Raleigh when school's out and in Charlotte when school's in again.
Yes.
Does that sound right?
Yes,
well, that's a great question. That's the first time I've had that question, but it's an excellent one, so I'm so glad you brought it up. I don't really have an answer for you, but I'm going to get an answer for you. I mean, ideally, we'd be able to move people between offices, without skipping a beat. But let me see what I can find out about that for you, and I'll get that back to you, Matthew. And
Perfect. Yes, and I can share it with everyone on the call today because I'll have their email too.
Okay.
That was a good question. Good job.
Yes, it was.
And while other questions are maybe kind of percolating, I would love to know, like, what is something a student who's applying for these roles could put on their resume to help stand out for you?
Okay, well, I think our number one probably criteria for employment is passion. So someone does not have to have had experience in a political campaign, but we want to see something where they were passionate about serving their community. Because that's ultimately what this is about, is serving our communities and making sure that the underserved are better served. So now I'm seeing a question up there. So anyway, yeah, so passion, just say something in your resume that talks to the passion you bring to what you do out in the community or to your academic work and just your life, because that's a criteria number one. We want people that are going to go out on the doors and be happy about it, excited, enthusiastic, smiling, cutting up with voters and taking pictures with them. So that's passion. Like Matthew represents so effectively, actually.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think that passion is like, the number one thing they can do too. Maybe even putting that in their summary on their resume of like the passion they have around politics and around creating change. And yeah, I love that. And then we have another question from Iris. They say there is a handful of Democrats who will not be voting in the 2020 election due to Biden being the nominee. How can we reach this population without invalidating experiences?
Well, okay, that's a good question, and I mean this might sound like an easy response, but as I mentioned earlier, we're not going to be talking about candidates at all. We're not going to be talking about candidates or platforms or planks. We're only going to be talking about voting. Period. I mean, we're going to be talking about people going and serving their communities by voting. We're going to ask them, what's important to your community right now? What's going on in your community that's important? What is it that you would like to see changed? And we're really asking them to speak on behalf of their community, not on behalf of themselves. So it's not really going to be about the candidates from our perspective. Now, this question is better asked of some of the campaigns such as, Mech Dems or Swing Left or some of the volunteer organizations that are out there stumping for particular candidates. And they're going to have to deal with that. That's quite true.
Nice. Yeah. And I want to remind everyone, like when you're looking at these roles and you're kind of thinking through all the different roles, you can definitely check out their website. So the website to go and check out careers is turnoutpack.org/jobs. You can also check out this specific field representative role in hire.uncc.edu. Simply go to the jobs tab on the left-hand side and search for job ID number 52411. If you have any problems in applying, always feel free to email me. My email is coming up right here, right now. Again, my name is Matthew French. My email is mkfrench@uncc.edu. Pete, we have a couple more minutes here, so I want to leave it for any students that have any questions. So feel free to type those in. But what have you found to be the most rewarding about being part of Turnout Pack?
That's a really good question. I was just talking with someone about this earlier today. As a matter of fact, I'll just refer to my experience last summer, and we were out there basically June, July, August, and the first half of September, and it was hot. It was definitely hot and humid, and I was wearing a floppy hat. I was wearing arm coverings, sunscreen like crazy, and otherwise as little clothes as I could get away with. But I was invited into this home by a 102-year-old woman, and it didn't happen just one time. She happened to be the oldest person that I ran into, but she brought me into her home, and she was a nice little old lady with all the photographs all over the living room and the piano and the stuffed upholstery, and she sat us down and she went and made us iced tea. And I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. You know, we had a very leisurely conversation with her. Sure, we want to talk to as many people as we possibly can because that's how we're efficient. But we're also trying to establish long-term, deep relationships with people. And every once in a while, it's okay to just stop and spend some time with somebody.
Totally.
That's what it's really all about.
Dude, I love that. I love that story and that, you know, that real qualitative experience around, you know, our careers. And, you know, I think students should always keep in mind that whenever you're looking at a role, no matter what role it is, especially in the political industry, is that everyone kind of knows each other as well. So this is a great way for you to connect with Pete, connect with others in the industry for kind of that next stepping stone in your career path. And I think a field rep is definitely going to give you all of those building blocks. So there's something called NACE, the National Association for Colleges and Employers, and one of the top skills that all employers ask for is communication. And I think it sounds like this is a great way for students to really make sure that communication is on point.
Absolutely right. It's all about it. Yep, that's right.
And we have one question from Talisha. In terms of social media work, are you all working on helping people with digital literacy?
Oh, absolutely. People at home, you mean? Yes. And that's really still taking form. And it, you know, this also is going to depend a little bit on what the options turn out to be for voting, because, you know, as you probably know, the Board of Elections is still trying to get some changes approved by the General Assembly that would make voting a lot easier for people, especially in the time of, I want to say in the time of cholera, but that's a book. This is in the time of COVID. But, you know, with vote by mail and, you know, absentee balloting and early voting and all of those options, we spend a lot of time talking to voters who need help with that. In fact, it's an integral part of our strategy. We even do a voter plan with our voters when we're getting closer to the election itself. We stop and visit them a second time face to face and do a voter plan with them and say, what's going to be the best way for you to vote? What's the best? And let's go ahead and pin that down. And if you're going to vote early, what day do you want to vote on? And let's pin that down. And, you know, we give them a refrigerator magnet that's got the date they agreed to, written onto it, and they stick that on their refrigerator. And so it's this long process, but we think, I mean, it pays off. Going back to that 10% gain thing we were talking about earlier. And you're right, there's plenty of opportunity to educate people about registration, voting by mail, early voting. And you do have an opportunity to help people get registered, even though that's not who you're out to talk to. You're out to talk to registered voters, but in many households, there are going to be other voters that are not registered. And so you have an opportunity, if you're willing to go ahead and engage those people and help them. You can't register for them, but you can help them get there. So, and there's plenty of opportunity for that, both with young people as well as with sometimes minority populations, people that are just not registered for whatever reason. And you can be the first person to involve them in the process. And, you know, I talked to so many people last summer where I talked to the parents, and then they would have high school kids there as well, or college kids. And those kids may or may not have been registered, but we went ahead and tried to make that happen.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think you know, the information you provided today really gives a better insight into the field rep role, as well as how it's a great starting point for anyone who's ready to get into that political atmosphere. And it also sounds like it's going to give you that really great base knowledge of how does voter registration work? How do political systems work? How do the nonprofits, the NGOs, the businesses that work in the realm of politics, how do they all kind of coincide? And so it sounds like the field rep would be, you know, great for any of those students who are interested in those areas. Again, I want to remind everyone, go into hireniner.uncc.edu to apply for the field rep position. I also have put in Pete's LinkedIn, so make sure you check out his LinkedIn, connect with him, let him know who you are, that you were in the meeting today, so you can feel free if you have any other questions that pop up. Pete, I want to thank you so much for coming in with us today, sharing some insight, and offering these opportunities to UNCC students and alumni.
You are so welcome. And just one more thing before we part here.
Sure, hit me with it.
We do get involved with the candidates themselves, not from the perspective that we are stumping for them, but because we want to know what they know and they want to know what we know. So we do develop relationships with, North Carolina State and House, Senate and House members. And, there are a dozen of those around Charlotte, maybe more, as well as, the larger race candidates. So, it's a possibility to make some connections is what I'm trying to say with people that are ultimately going to be in office. So that's something to add to just keep in the back of your mind when it comes to career.
Totally. That networking piece, growing that network.
Yeah.
The rule of life a lot of the times in career, it's like who you know and where you kind of get to that next step. And, you just got to put yourself in those places where those things can happen. And I think that, working with Turnout Pack and, any sort of internship around the political atmosphere, especially during an election season, is always a good way to kind of get those resume skills built up and for future things after you graduate and other internships. But that was a good one, Pete. I'm glad to hear that students can kind of get even more connected with those upper levels, which is awesome.
Right. Very good.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Be sure to check out career.uncc.edu for more virtual career meetups that are happening all the time. Thank you so much to Pete again for coming in. Thank you all for tuning in. Look at all the thank yous coming up, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Thank you all for coming. Good talking to you.
Bye-bye.